now. I know she'd be proud of me and how. To see I've come the distance from there to here. To see I found a way to rise above my fear. To see I found a way to straighten out my confusion. To find a way to leave behind my past delusion. That I found a way to understand her and just love her. To never think for a moment that I could ever be above her. To understand the difficulty that life sometimes presents us. To know that sometimes we do things that cause others to resent us. And it isn't just a case of callous disregard, although the pain is often something that we cannot just discard. Life is not so simple, it's a web of complications, and it isn't always possible to complete the restorations. So sometimes we will part ways with a wound that hasn't healed, and when we go to till the earth, we're left with crosses in the field. And that is where I found myself in the years that followed death. I cried so hard so many times, I often lost my breath. I couldn't make much sense, I was too young to understand. The wounds I had inside of me made it hard for me to stand. I was filled with shame and pain and sadness that I couldn't figure out. I was like someone who had died when you can't get the rigor out. And for the longest time, I just tried to numb life out. I feared it would hurt as bad as pulling a knife out. And yet whenever I drank too much, the poison would leak out. And sometimes I got so drunk, I'd suddenly freak out. It's like walking around with landmines placed everywhere upon you. You'll never know when they'll explode in a chain reaction all along you. And for the longest time, I guess, I tried to wait things out. But I couldn't handle all the anger and the pain that brings out. Eventually I had to begin the journey back to where I started. I needed to understand what had become so broken-hearted. And the journey back took me to the places where I would finally find you. And it allowed me to see into the dark in places that could blind you. Because in the center of the storm, we can only see our view. And so it was I formed my thoughts without ever knowing you. And oddly enough, it was in knowing me that I finally could see you. Because it was the things that created you that caused me to be like you. It was a multi-generational pattern passed from one generation to the next. And most people will never know that unless they read it in a psychology text. I was lucky because I was curious about why people do the things they do. Why people lose direction to end up on the paths that they stray to. I knew there was something wrong with me, but what it was I wasn't sure. So I started to read psychology books to see if them and I'd concur. I started to think I was crazy because everything looked just like me. When you've grown up in complete confusion, the truth is hard to see. And if you can't read yourself out of the hurt, you must go through the helping process. You need the help of someone else so you don't end up feeling soulless. And I had a tendency to dislike myself from a negative perspective. So in my search to find myself, I was not a good detective. And the addiction had clouded everything, which made it hard to see. Everything about my life that added up to me. And things were complicated by all the emotions not expressed and all the trouble that truth caused me when I attempted to confess. But when the pain is bad enough, there's some action you must take, and so I learned there was a lot of amends that I must make. I learned about the part I played and the person I'd become, and so I began to understand much clearer the place that I'd come from. I understood you could not mother me because no one mothered you, and I figured that your mother controlled you in a way that smothered you. And so you did to me all that you knew, that was what was done to you. Because when I grew up, these were the things that I would also do. It's when I saw I was the same that I realized what it was. That we repeat the behavior that we experience because that's exactly what it does. Our experiences tend to shape us to repeat what we've been through. It's like somewhere we've come to believe that that's the behavior we should do. And the only way we can escape it is to work through all the pain, to rise above the ugly truth and wash away the stain, to find a way to forgive ourselves and everyone around us, to step out of the dysfunction that at one time did surround us. And I was able to make that journey, and I finally did arrive to a place of hopes and dreams where you can do far more than survive. It was a place where I finally found myself, less how others would define me. It was a place where I finally had a choice about how I would design me, because I finally was set free from the control of any others. I could no longer be affected by my sister or my brother. I now stood solidly on my feet. I made all of my own choices. I realized I had a lot to offer to those that had no voices. I changed my life dramatically as I began to live with much more passion. I learned about myself and others, which enhanced my understanding of compassion. And I also came to understand you and how difficult it was to raise 3 children on your own, which takes the effort that it does. And I know you never got to make the journey offered me. And I know you never found a place where you could be set free. And so I write this for you, to let you know that I have made it. And there's so much of you inside me that I hope life never fades it. I wish you could have found your way to a world with much more light. I know that you came to a point where you couldn't win the fight. And in those final years, you realized all that you had lost. But it was too late to turn it round, and so you paid the final cost. But I want you to know that you didn't die for nothing. The pain in which you lived your life provided me with something. I was eventually able to see what had so affected you, because when I looked at myself, I so detected you. And if it hadn't been for you and the sacrifice you made, I would have lived the same life and paid the price you paid. And I often don't think it's fair what happened to your life. I know you so wanted to be a mother and a wife, and I can't give that back to you, and I know I never could, because at that time I didn't understand the meaning of what it would or what it should. But I understand it now, and I try to help others find their way. And I often think of you and how long you've been away. I know one day we'll meet again on another realm elsewhere, and I know as I walk through my life that you are somewhere there. I just wanted you to know that you have a place deep inside my heart, that will always be there, no matter how long we are